Yeah, no, I agree. Okay. So these are our officers this year. I know this was a slide I had up last year, but I did want to highlight one thing this year, or this time, excuse me. Uh, we are starting a GRCC chapter for the students at Grand Rapids Community College. So that is something that is still coming up, and we're working with the leadership at GRCC right now with that. So I wanted to make sure we highlighted that. And also, each year for our parent company, which is now ASCM, we have to submit for our chapter kind of like a scorecard, and we get rated on how well we do, the different events that we put on and the different things that we do in our communities and for our chapter, for our membership in the local area. And I am happy to say that we have achieved the, it's called C-Bar, and we've achieved platinum again for the, I don't even know how many years we've been platinum, but that's awesome. So I would just like to take a minute to thank the rest of the board members and all the participating members for just their contributions to all that we do here in the Grand Rapids area. So thank you very much. Okay, if you don't have it right now on the table, and you can get it on the website as well, so visit our website at apics-gr.org. And there is a program guide for what we have for upcoming events, so check that out. We have a lot of resources on there. There are different training tools and things like that, and for upcoming events as well. So if you need one and want one in your hand, there's some on the table on the way out, as well as different information on different certifications such as CSCP, CPIM, and CLTD. So, and also membership if you're not a member. So if you'd like to check that out on your way out, that would be great. Go ahead and feel free to take one of those brochures. We do have some upcoming training events that I wanted to highlight. We do have another CSCP certification class starting in February, and that goes through May. I believe that's, what, 13? Who's teaching that? Where's Todd's teaching? Is it 13 weeks? 13 weeks, okay. So so February 24th. So you can sign up online or through our website. So please check that out if you're interested in getting a CSCP certification. CPIM 2, there's CPIM 1, this is CPIM 2, and that is starting March 3rd. I believe also 13 weeks? Is that a 13 week? Who does that? Okay, I think it's around 13 weeks. We also have several seminars coming up in the new year. Excellence in Inventory Management starts March 17th, and also Improving Operational Planning March 4th, 5th, and 6th. So check those out on the website if that's something that interests you. A lot of great training opportunities there. So, okay, I just had somebody, this gentleman here, who I just met tonight. I'm sorry, I'm bad with names. 3 times, I'll get it, but Greg. I was just talking to Greg about this, and he inquired about the student mentorship program. I had mentioned this before at our September event, and GVSU does a mentorship program with their students, and there's a parent chapter that's over ISM, CSCMP, and APICS, the student chapters at the college itself. So these are all students that are involved in these programs, and what we are looking for is if you are interested in mentoring a student, you can go to our website at admin@apics.gr.org and email us, and there's a form on there you can fill out. This is not very entailed, okay, so don't get scared. What it is it may require an hour or 2 of your time in a month to just maybe take a phone call, exchange some emails, maybe meet them for coffee. They're looking for guidance from people that are in the industry as they are emerging from college. So they're looking for just that mentor, and it's not this in-depth program where you have to, meet with people for 30 weeks or a year commitment and you're, spending 10 hours a week with them. This is a very minimal commitment, but it's going to make a major impact. So we're looking for our membership to help support these programs that we do through the colleges for our students. So we'd appreciate anything that you guys can do. If you feel led to do this, please check out the website. Jill, make sure you tell Randy I talked about this. Okay. Also, we are getting modern. there's a new way to survey, and on your tables, everybody has a smartphone, right? QR, okay. Well, some of us may have some dumb phones. I have a dumb phone, but no, I'm just kidding. Anyway, we value your input, and we struggle to get people to fill out our survey for our events and things. So we would really appreciate it before you go if you would just zap your QR thing on there and take our survey really quick. Or you can go on our website and do it as well, but we would really appreciate your feedback because that helps us to know how to plan for the future and what people are actually looking for and the content that you'd want. We want to give you ROI for coming out tonight in this winter wonderland, and so we need your feedback to do that because we're doing the best we can, but we need the more feedback we get, the better program we can put on for everybody. So, and we want to make sure that the investment that you make coming out here tonight is well worth it. So we would appreciate your phones scanning our cards there. Okay, right now we're going to go into certification and PIN presentations, and I'd like Todd and Sridhar, if you could please come up here and join me. So one of the things as the board we try to do as we are moving forward into the new environment of supply chain and the ever-changing culture, we are trying to provide, promote, support, and celebrate. So when I say that, we are trying to provide value-add content for all our membership. We are trying to promote learning opportunities that we have available to us as members and non-members within our region. And we're also trying to support our membership as well as celebrate successes. So our goal as a board is, oh my gosh, sorry. Our goal as a board is to provide the opportunities for our membership to learn and grow both professionally and individually through content of our PDMs, class offerings, networking, and certifications. And today we celebrate a few of these achievements with our membership. So you guys can take it away. I have, here's the first one. This is the first slide. She's first.
Good evening. If you don't know me, my name is Sridhar Bhatt. I am basically in charge of this public education. So if anything, any need of your certification in CPIM or CSCP or CLTD, please come and see me, or you can email me. My email is on the website. And today, I'm here to honor CLTD certificate, Sheetal Sundaram. She's from Bedford. Please come. So the CLTD stands for Certification Logistics, Transport, and distribution. Okay. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yep. This is for you. Yeah. It's a hard work that she has done. This is one of the newest offering in APICS. This is the latest thing that a lot of people want to get certified in this area. Please take a look at it, and all the details are in our website. Todd?
This is Rachel first. Okay, that's fine.
The next presentation, I hate microphones, hopefully you can hear me, is Certified Supply Chain Professional. It's a certification that takes a lot of work. It took me quite a while to achieve, and I know the people that achieve this and the people who are certified here know the kind of work and blood, sweat, and tears that goes into getting this certification. And it should mean two things to the individuals who are going to receive these tests tonight. Hopefully a nice bump in income. Eventually, I think that happens because people recognize that these people who are certified, and these two individuals I've worked with quite a bit, got to know a little bit personally, worked very hard for this, and I know they know their stuff. They're top-flight supply chain professionals that any company would be on to have. Okay, and the certification that they've achieved is kind of the calling card of that. So I'd like two people to come forward, Rachel Jarrett and Mary Jane Rubenstahl. Come forward and be recognized in front of your peers. Seriously, congratulations. Give these people a round of applause. Come on.
again, congratulations to all the PIN recipients. I know it's a major undertaking to go through these classes. They're not easy. There's a lot of information, and I mean, it just takes a lot. So just so you know, this is not one of those things that they're just handed out. These are very well deserved and earned. So I do want to call out for a minute our chapter for one thing, and I've mentioned this before. I've been to a couple of national APICS events and met with other people throughout the country that have from different chapters, and I have to tip our hat to our training and development team, Sridhar and Todd, Randy Gilbert, and the others that teach, Randall Schaefer, that fill in and do different things for our chapter. And I have to say that when I sat amongst other people from different chapters, they had nothing that pales in comparison to what your local Grand Rapids chapter has to offer. So I was like very proud to be representing our chapter and our I guess quadrant of the country for APICS. So anyway, I would just like to give our education department a round of applause. So if you guys would, they're very hardworking and they're very deserving of congratulations. So next, I would like to introduce our speaker for the evening. Many of you have had the opportunity to hear Dr. Stephen Melnick before. He is a professor at Grand Valley University, professor of supply chain management at Michigan State University, and he has co-authored 21 books and over 100 referee journal articles and numerous practitioner articles. His research focus includes supply chain risk and resilience, strategic supply chain management, supply chain cybersecurity, and certified management standards. Dr. Melnick sits on the editorial review board of numerous journals, including the Journal of Business Logistics, International Journal of Production Research, and International Journal of Operations and Production Management. From 2014 to 2016, he was a member of the APICS Board of Directors. From 2017 to 19, Dr. Melnick had a joint appointment with the University of Newcastle in Australia, where he was the Newcastle Global Innovation Chair in the Supply Chain Management. In 2017, the Academy of Management and Operations and Supply Chain Division recognized Dr. Melnick as a distinguished scholar in the field. Dr. Melnick is recognized for his ability to bridge the gap between theory and practice. In 2018, Dr. Melnick received the Withrow Teacher Scholar Award from the Eli Board School of Business, Michigan State University, in recognition of his work as both a researcher and a teacher. And after talking with him this evening a little bit, he has also just recently worked with the Department of Navy for our U.S. government. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Stephen Melnick.
First of all, gotta get myself wired up. Okay, let's see. All right, on. Okay, you can hear me, right? Okay, before I left, I was getting ready to leave. I asked my wife any words of wisdom, and she said, yes, think of yourself as Socrates. And I said, what do you mean? At first glance, I thought that was a great idea. Socrates, wise, insightful, asked good questions, right? So I said, that's what you want. No, she said, remember what happened to Socrates. He talked too much. They didn't like it. They killed him. So anyway, we're going to start with that. What we're going to talk about today is, first of all, let me give you some background. This is new. This is the first time that I've ever done this presentation, which means suffer. By the way, you guys sense of my humor. It's not good. My wife tells me I'm as funny as Kirk Douglas. I never understood that. Anyway, what we're going to talk about is something that's taking place right now in the field of supply chain management. How many of you right now are starting to hear about this concept called Industry 4.0, the digital supply chain? Okay, what does it mean to you? By the way, just to get you to know, because we're a small group, this is known as audience participation time. What does that mean? What makes it different? Oh, by the way, one more thing. This presentation will be made available and will be available for downloading. Okay, the reason I didn't get it earlier is we had the snafu. This is about 35 megabyte presentation. So that's a fair bit. What does it mean to you?
Use data for your supply chain.
Yeah, but what makes it new? That's the thing. We've always used data. What makes it new and different? Yeah. So what? Okay, but yeah, but why is that so important? And the reason I bring it up is because you're facing, how many of you are finding that this concept of the digital supply chain, the digital economy is confusing? That's something we're starting to find amongst a lot of practitioners. Fortunately, the academics aren't helping you. And what happened is, after I've traveled across the world, in fact, visiting Haier Corporation in Qingdao, China, which is, if you've ever had Qingdao beer, that's where it comes from. And I found out that if you're going to drink Qingdao beer, you have to drink beer that comes from either well 1, 2, or 5. Anything else sucks. Anyway, wonderful things. We're starting to see a change taking place, and we're going to talk about that. And what I've found is that as I've looked across this topic and talked with people across the world, there's a fundamental transition taking place, which is requiring us to identify 5 new skills that you have to have. And these are skills I'm going to give you to think about, because the organization that can teach its members how to master these skills will succeed. By the way, little observation, the presentation title has changed, and I'm going to bring your attention to something APICS does really well, which is operational excellence, and why operational excellence in today's environment is becoming a strategic, not a tactical issue. So anyway, that's me. We're going to talk about the 5 S's. We're going to talk about sensing. We're going to talk about scaling. We're going to talk about security. We're going to talk about social. We're going to talk about strategy. And then we're going to end by talking about the importance of operational excellence. In today's environment, where we have to make changes quickly, in the absence of complete information, where we know we're going to be wrong some of the time, operational excellence becomes increasingly more important. And the analogy I'm going to give you is, think of a car that you're driving, and the car has a problem. Do you spend your time looking at the road or really listening to the car? And think about what happens when you're driving a car that works well. So let's talk about it. In order to begin this presentation, I'm going to ask you to look at this, which is essentially the things we start to see that are affecting the digital economy. And I'm going to ask you to become aware of it. Industry 4.0, a concept that comes out of Germany. What's interesting about Industry 4.0 is it's a new model. It's a model based on responsiveness. It's a model based on customization. In Industry 4.0, it is lean applied to the customer. How's that? The unit, the market segment is 1. Combine that with Internet of Things, cloud computing, machine-to-machine communications, 3D printing, social media. I'm going to make a statement. We in APICS don't do enough on social media. Social media has become the new way of talking about problems. When we have a problem, we no longer talk to our friends. We post it on social media. How many of you, before you make a purchase, go to YouTube to see what's been talked about? Anyone here? I'm doing it right now. How many of you, when you go to Amazon, you read the reviews from past people? Here's the thing. Social media now is making failures in the supply chain visible and immediate. Good example. Some years ago, a band is going from Halifax to Lincoln, Nebraska. Why they want to go to Lincoln, Nebraska, I'll never know. There's just too much damn corn there. It's the only state I can think of where the pigs outnumber the people. Anyway, I told you this was bad humor. I warned you. You cannot complain. Well, they're going and they stop off in Chicago, Illinois. This is a United flight. And as he's deplaning, one of the women is looking through the window and saying, "My God, they're throwing guitars around." One of the guitars they're throwing around is this guy's guitar. The man is an MSU and wideout. He misses it. It drops. The guitar is broken. United refuses to do anything. So what he does is he posts a song called United Breaks Guitars. It's available on YouTube. Look at it. Guess how many hits it has? Take a guess. How many hits do you think it has? Huh? Not that much. No. Ready for this? 19 million. That is the impact. Supply chain problems are becoming visible. The other thing we're going to look at is big data. I'm right now working with SGS out of New York, New Jersey, which is one of the world's largest certification auditing organization. We are working with a database which is literally millions of records. We're also going to be looking at the issue of innovation in Industry 4.0. So what else are we going to get to? It is basically, think like the following. Look at everything that's happening in terms of IoT. In fact, I'm going to give you a suggestion. If you have a chance, go to the July 13th Economist. The middle section of The Economist is absolute dynamite. It is some of the most interesting insights on the digital supply chain you've ever read. And one of the things they're talking about is that the digital economy is now going to move growth. This is taken, I kind of used some of the overheads I did in South Africa for this. But the thing that's interesting is the final point. In today's environment, the issue is no longer cost. Cost is a given. The issue now is innovation and responsiveness. That's the new green. So, welcome to the digital supply chain.
Industrial revolutions used to come one at a time and rather slowly. Today's disruptive new technologies and dramatic shifts in consumer behavior are coming in waves, and it can seem, well, rather overwhelming. But with change comes tremendous opportunities to transform and get ahead. Tomorrow's leaders know that to capitalize, their supply chains need to become digital, smart, and connected. Industry 4.0, or the industrial internet, is enabling manufacturing to become much smarter and more agile. Paradigm shifts such as mass customization are finally becoming a reality. Today's digital-savvy customer is in the driving seat. Until now, managing omni-channel complexity profitably has largely been an issue for retailers. Now many consumer-oriented manufacturers have the opportunity to drive their brand direct, and with it comes the challenge on how to do so profitably. But get it right, and there are value-add opportunities for margin, including range, service, and customization. And there is more. The Internet of Things brings a wealth of new possibilities resulting from direct access to this rich seam of dynamic data from consumers and devices. Augmented reality means increased labor productivity, and in transportation and logistics, improvement in visibility, along with emerging new service models including 3D printing and drones. How do you capitalize on this wealth of data? First of all, you need a connected supply chain. Now imagine a digital hub that senses the supply chain end to end and integrates to the digital world, so it is shelf-connected, dynamically reporting customer signals, sensing the supply chain environment and the Internet of Things. By sensing big data from the market and utilizing advanced analytics, the supply chain has the power to transform service delivery while generating greater profitability. Applying S&OP and integrated business planning across the supply chain ensures conformance to business strategy even in the face of digital disruption. Moreover, a one-size-fits-all linear supply chain is a thing of the past. Instead, we now create dynamic supply chains with optimized configurations for your key segments, adding efficiency and margin along with value and differentiation to your customers. Creating a dynamic and connected, seamless supply chain grid for the digital age. JDA.
Before you go off and say this is advertising, it's not. How many of you ever heard of a company by the name of Zara? Zara is important in fashion. They don't forecast. Their lead time from order to delivery is 1 week. They don't build in China, they build in Europe. A product doesn't stay any longer than 72 hours in their warehouse. They're the future. They are the example. So what's going on? If you've seen my presentations, you know about these, and I'm just going to basically quickly go through them. We've got an aging taking place, which means a lot of us baby boomers are retiring, or dying, or both. And what we're doing is we're being, shush, wait till it happens to you. My wife gave me property for Christmas. It was 8 feet by 10 feet by 8 feet. For my birthday, I got the box that goes with it. Anyway, we have things like energy volatility, shift of power to the east, rise of technology, experiential supply chains. We're also starting to see something else. We're starting to see regional supply chains. Global trade is transforming. And finally, we're starting to see something which I'm getting interested in, is cybersecurity. Okay, let's go on. And if you put these together, you've got APICS in 2016 at the Washington conference introduced the RISE, and I thought that was one of the most amazing things they've done. And the RISE talked about the 9 developments. And when you put them together, they're the new supply chain. Now, I'm going to ask you to understand what the new supply chain looks like. When we talk to practitioners, executives across the world, we find at Michigan State that the new supply chain is driven by 4 imperatives. They are driven by responsiveness, sustainability. How many of you have recently gone to Burger King to have a Impossible Food Whopper? I have. Are you ready for this? According to the Wall Street Journal, that single product, a plant-based replacement for hamburgers, is fueling Burger King's rejuvenations in this quarter. It is beating McDonald's because people want sustainability. How about transparency? How many of you are finding out that your customers want to see transparency in their supply chain? They want to know where the products are coming from. They want to know it right back to the seed, so to speak. We're starting to see that. In fact, what's interesting, remember that July 13th article I talked about? In that article, they talked about how Walmart, Amazon, and Alibaba are putting IoT sensors right in the field for the crops that they're growing. They want to be able to monitor those crops in real time. They want to be able to show their customers the viability, the sustainability of the products that they're harvesting. They want to be able to identify potential problems. And the final thing it's innovation. This is a new ballgame. We're now looking at our ability to create and fulfill demands quickly. So, and to give you an example of this really got me thinking. September 15th, 2015, I was in Columbus, Ohio, otherwise known as the second home of the enemy compared to that place in Ann Arbor, which we refer to as the evil empire. We're going to be slaughtered this Saturday, we know it. Anyway, what's interesting, I was in Columbus, Ohio, and I had a chance to go to a shoe company. This is a company that basically buys odd lots. They buy shoes that other companies are getting to the end of the season. This is a company where they deal with variety. As we were walking through the plant, we stopped, and the person looked at me and said, showed me a line. And he said, that line cost the company $1.7 million. And he looked at me and said, how long do you think it took us to go from awareness of the need for the line until that line was in? In your company, how long would that take? How long? $1.7 million investment. Year and a half. How many would have over a year? Hands up. How many of you less than a year? 1. How many of you more than 2 years? I said 2 years. I'm a professor. I don't know anything. He looked at me and said 7 months. And I asked him the question that was really on my mind. How did you know you were doing the right thing? And he came up and said something which I thought was really insightful. He said, in today's environment, if we wait until we are certain, we're dead. You have to be able to move in the basis of incomplete information. And you have to have confidence that the system will not be destroyed by your decision. If we don't invest, Amazon will eat our lunch. So that is really getting in. So what we're going to talk about in this new environment is the fact that the traits, what are the traits? We have digitized tracking, we have connected. By the way, connectiveness exposes us to problems we have never had before. We're starting to see the fact that we are now exposed to internet risks, not because somebody's targeting us, but because we are connected. And we have what's known, I refer to as collateral damage. It is shared data, it's personalized, it's direct. This is the environment that we're talking about, and I'm going to make a statement. I've gone across the world, and I'll share you something to think about. June of last year, July 15th, I was in Qingdao, China, I forget the name of the company. A large manufacturing operation. They build appliances. They bought GE's Appliance Works. They were announcing the rollout of Cosmo. What's Cosmo? It is a planning system that's going to ensure that by 2020, every personalized, customized piece of appliance that will be produced, Haier Corporation, the name is Haier Corporation, H-I-E-R, Haier Corporation. Every appliance that's going to be produced will be produced in the same cost and lead time as a standard product. They have the system. That, people, is your competition. It's not cheap labor. It's people working smart. So anyway, so what the things are, that's what you're competing against. So how do you succeed? Well, we're going to talk about the 5S: sensing, scaling, security, social, strategy. Okay, and the caveat. Okay, let's talk about what we mean by this. Let's start by looking at sensing. I've used this example a number of times because I've always thought this is a good example. I was given it some years ago, and initially I didn't know what to do with it. And finally, after thinking about it for a while, I figured out why it was so important. In 1952, the United States Army Air Force was involved in the war in Korea. The war in Korea was unique for several reasons. Number one, it was the time the Air Force transitioned from propeller-driven airplanes to having everything done by jet fighters. In 1952, you have to understand the problem facing the United States. We had one of the best airplanes in the world, the F-86 Sabre. We had some of the best pilots in the world, trained beyond anyone else's standards. Yet the problem was when these pilots went into combat, a lot of the pilots got shot down very quickly. So in order to address that question, they brought in this person, Colonel John R. Boyd, who is the epitome of an out-of-the-box thinker. And the first thing he realized was that the rate of change of speed had changed. In World War II, planes flew at 350 to 400 miles per hour. That meant they closed between 600 to 800 miles per hour. In the Korean War, airplanes were now flying between 650 to 750. They were closing at 1,500 miles per hour. He came to an interesting realization. If you waited until you were certain of the enemy, what would happen? You'd get shot down. So he came up with the concept of OODA loop. Observe, orient, act, decide, act. It's now the basis of almost all air combat. Why is that important to us? It's important to us because we have to be able to replicate the same things in our environment. We have to be able to sense what's going on in the marketplace. This means we have to be able to use our supply chain. How many of you, sorry about this, how many of you actively draw on insights offered by your suppliers or your customers when identifying potential opportunities and threats? I have seen, this is interesting, when we started to pursue this topic, we found that many people wanted to do it, but few knew how to do it. We have to be able to sense, we have to be able to assess, to determine what to do with it. We then have to be able to formulate a course of action, deploy it, and then recalibrate. What recalibration says is, look, things have changed, and you're asking something that's very simple. Are our current objectives still feasible? Or can we bypass them and go to a higher level? Or if they're no longer feasible, what's the new norm? And guess what? Learn. What learning is one of the most poorly understood things we do in business. If you learn, you should always be willing to ask and answer 3 questions. What are they? I'll give you the first one. What went wrong? How many of you stop with that? What are the other 2 questions you should ask? What went right? What was missing? That is something we do very poorly. Many of us correct, but we don't prevent. And the new companies are doing the prevent. They're competing not because they're smarter, but because they take operations and supply chain to the next stage. And then we have to repeat. And guess what? We have to do it fast. The best example of this was an American company, CNN. CNN developed a reputation for being the first to report news events. Because unlike its competitors, ABC, CBC, etc., CBS, what CNN did is they pioneered the concept of the 15-minute stand-up meeting. Everyone comes together, you make a decision, and you act. No more than 15 minutes. Why do you think you're standing up? If you sit down, people want to talk. This is what the new reality is. So, essentially, what is happening? Evidence of need. We're starting to see that in the past, this is now expected. So speed is becoming new currency. Innovation is now being characterized. Past experiences by companies like Apple. Apple has learned if you introduce a new innovation, better have the product ready. Apple yesterday introduced a new 16-inch MacBook Pro. That product will be available this week. And by the way, it's not a new concept. Anyone ever heard of General Nathan Bedford Forrest? He was one of the foremost Confederate cavalrymen. He was a scourge of the Federalists. And he once said, success is get there firstest with the mostest. And that's our new mantra. What's the problem with speed? You have to act before you have complete information. If you wait, you'll lose. Optimality, and I do hate this. I am in a business school, in a department where I have people who think about optimality. I think they're idiots. Optimality is only for stable environments. You can never be optimal. Things are changing. I can't tell them that because then they prove to me why optimal is correct. And I feel like saying, my God, that's silly. So what does that mean? What it means is in today's environment, you have to think about issues like resilience and robustness. If you do something wrong, it's okay. The system will perform. How do you survive? You need the early warning. The faster you move, the more early warning you need. It's like, I'm a motorcyclist. What they tell you in motorcycling is you never override your headlight. The faster you go, the more in the dark you have to see. So where do we get the warnings? We get the warnings from our supply chain. You know what the irony is? This is not new. A guy by the name of John Hinkey out of Oakland University has a thing called the Working Relationship Index, which he pioneered for the auto industry. It is known as the Supplier Loyalty Survey. Every year, everyone wants to know in the auto industry how they did on that. What he recognized is that when your suppliers like you, they work with you, they share insights. And where do we get and here's what we get. We get it from people like supply chains, customers, consultants, academia, professional societies. Essentially, it's radar. You have to have good relationships with your supply chain. You have to, and here's the point. It's not enough to generate the knowledge. You have to have the ability to process it. Most organizations lack that. You have people who point out the problems, and the organization doesn't know what to do with it. By the way, this is not, you can read it on your own. What I want you to be aware of in this is taken from the website for the Working Relationship Index. This is what these people have found about the value. And the value that they've pointed out is significant. They tried to put a value, a dollar figure on it, and they stopped when they said it's in excess of $5 billion. So, what's the challenge? We have to deal with distortion. How many of you remember the telephone game? Remember the telephone game where I start off and I would start with you and I'd give you a phrase and by the time it got over to you, it'd be different? That's what happens in the supply chain. How do you deal with distortion? Also, suppliers may not want to communicate with you. One of the problems we're starting to find in today's environment is that we need visibility, but at times our suppliers don't want us to see beyond them. That becomes a new challenge we have to address. That was one of the challenges I tried to get APICS to see when I was on the board. I was told it was not relevant. Oh, well. Okay, so what are we doing? Sensing is really multiple things. You have to generate, you have to vet, you have to make sure it makes sense. Is it good information? Can we organize it so it tells us something? Can we assess it's important? Can we pass it up the organization? And then can we act on it? What's the second element of sensing? It's scaling. In today's environment, you have to be able to increase your capacity quickly. That's scaling. I'm now working more and more with the National Defense Industry Association. And one of the things that's motivating us is in 2018, the Pentagon released a report. And it said the following: World War II will never occur again. World War II was a 4-year war for the States. Everyone else in the world, it was 6 years. I was part of the everyone else. I was in Canada. I'm originally a Canadian. It took American industry until October of 1942 for them to scale. Almost 1 year. The Pentagon is telling us the new war is going to be less than 120 days, which means you have to be able to scale quickly. How many of you can increase your capacity by 25% in 120 days or less? If you can't, you are having a problem with scaling. By the way, when we talk about scaling, we have to think about 3 types of scaling. Scaling up, scaling down, and by the way, that's a disaster for most companies. Why? Because most companies, when they scale down, try to slough off everything instead of saying, what's really critical? How do we protect that? And then how do we shift focus? We go into another industry. And I'm going to tell you that's going to become important because economists are telling us that we are going to see some kind of a slowdown. If it's not in 2020, it'll hit us in 2021, which means we have to be aware of this. So, how long would it take your organization to a 20% increase in demand? A 20% decrease in demand? And shift from one industry to another? Those are the challenges I'm going to have you think about for your companies. Let's go on. Security. There are 2 issues in security. The first issue is security of product. We had something occur that was really interesting recently. Purdue and other chicken manufacturers recalled a lot of chicken. Why? It was contaminated. Today's environment, our customers want to know where their products are coming from. They assume security and they want to trust but verify. But there's also another issue, which I'm going to tell you most of you are not even ready for. It's cybersecurity. So let's talk about this.
Whether we live near a coastline or not, seafood is an increasingly popular option for Americans. The U.S. is now the 2nd largest consumer of seafood worldwide, right after China. The Centers for Disease Control says about 20% of adults are eating fish at least twice a week. But choosing your fish doesn't always mean getting what you're after. Meg Oliver has that story. Good morning, Meg. Tell us more.
Good morning, Michelle. Recent investigations and studies have shown mislabeling, sometimes due to error, but often the result of outright fraud, is rampant in the industry, showing up at both in the marketplace and on restaurant menus. I spoke to local merchants who told us exactly what to look for.
There's no antibiotics and there's no growth enhancers. There's none of that.
Every week, Lisa Rosenberg peppers her local seafood market with plenty of questions.
King
Is the one from New Zealand.
right.
From salmon and scallops to shrimp, Lisa wants to know when and where everything came from.
Just knowing that the seafood we're getting is fresh and coming from a country that has shipped it in a timely manner and markets it and is honest with their marketing practices.
Those practices have come under fire around the globe with rampant fraud in all stages of the seafood industry. One study of retailers found seafood like grouper, cod, and snapper may be mislabeled up to 87% of the time, swapped out for less desirable and cheaper varieties. For example, only 7 of the 120 samples of red snapper were actually red snapper.
It's a very big problem, and the issue is that once it's prepared, there's really no way to check it other than DNA testing, which a lot of companies are now doing.
Vinnie Milbourne hails from a long line of fishermen. The fishmonger at Greenpoint Fish and Lobster Company in Brooklyn, New York, specializes in local, domestic, and traceable species. His storefront acts as a fish market, raw bar, and restaurant.
Where do you buy your fish?
I have a network of small boat fishermen and wharves all over the country that are shipping to me daily through the air or by truck, and we are processing every single day to bring in high quality fresh seafood. This is a beautiful steelhead trout.
Vinny not only knows where his fish come from, he can tell a tale about each one.
This striped bass came from Massachusetts, from a fishing vessel named Stanley by a guy I know named Seth.
That personal connection is hard to find. It's estimated more than 90% of the seafood consumed in the U.S. is imported, and less than 1% is tested by the government.
Is it better to buy organic seafood?
Not really. In this country, there's no legal standard for organic for seafood.
No legal standard.
No, when they did the organic standards for meat and poultry and chicken, they excluded seafood. So when you see organic on seafood, it's not a legally enforceable standard, so they can put that on just about anything.
Larry Olmsted is the author of Real Food, Fake Food. He spent years researching the unregulated food industry, calling fish the most frequently faked food Americans buy.
The inexpensive fish that are being substituted, a lot of them are farmed in Southeast Asia from places that have been shown over and over again to use bad practices, ban drugs, ban pesticides. The bottom line is a lot of the fish that we eat, we don't know where it came from or how it was produced at all.
So how dangerous is this?
I think it's pretty dangerous. There's tens of millions of people that get sick from foodborne illness every year that the CDC cannot explain.
If they don't clean it up and we don't see more regulations, what could happen in the future?
The destructions of the ocean, and it's the single biggest source of protein in the world. We have a burgeoning global population. Since the history of mankind, having enough food to eat has been the #1 priority of people. So it's really important that we take care of the oceans.
Larry says the best course of action for consumers is to buy whole fish. He says don't be intimidated. You can have them cut it and clean it for you, so then you know exactly what you're bringing home to your families.
Pretty stunning. It's stunning there's no legal standard for organic seafood in this country.
No, and if you're going to go and you want to buy organic seafood, make sure it comes from Canada, New Zealand, or Australia. They're the only countries that have regulations.
And at a time when regulations are being cut left and right, it sounds like this is a place where we really need more.
Yeah.
Meg, thank you so much.
By the way, you just found out something interesting. How important is visibility of the supply chain? Here's the point. It's no longer one up, one down. It's right through. So we're going to talk about the other issue, which is one of my issues I'm now working in. I got involved with this because of the Department of Defense. In 2016, the Department of Defense announced a new initiative, the DFARS requirement, which is if you wanted to be a supplier, you had to conform. It was the first attempt to introduce supply chain cybersecurity. Before we begin, what are we protecting? Let's understand the game. We are protecting three things. We are protecting information technology, bills of material, mass production schedules, cost structures, routings. What would happen if a competitor could go into your MPS, into your MRP system, and randomly change your MPS? Do you think that's theory? No. Happened in 2012 to a petrochemical company. 2 Chinese hackers got in. They identified the cost structure. Why would you identify your competitor's cost structure? You want to find out what the variable cost is. They identified what the customers ordered. And then when they knew what was happening, they went in and randomly altered the MPS. Due dates, quantity, quality. What would that do to your system? Not only did they do that, but they also wrecked the backup. This is what we're talking about. Then the next area is IP, innovation. IP to many people is innovation. It's no longer innovation. It's other things. It's industrial design. It's knowledge of your customer. It's target prices. How about OT, operating equipment? It is things such as your shop floor equipment, your warehouse equipment, increasingly being run by technology. So what? Here are some facts. 69% of firms experience an attempted or realized loss of data to cybersecurity breaches. American companies in 2018 spent an estimated $84 billion United States to defend against breaches that cost them about $2 trillion. By the way, 36% of the executives who were surveyed felt that that was unnecessary. The average cost of a cybersecurity breach in the United States is $7.91 million. And the time to contain a breach from the time it occurs until it's contained in the United States is 276 days. By the way, that's a citation. It's IBM and Primrose report, and I can give you a copy if you want it. And here's the other thing. And the GAO in 2017 made the following a report where it stated that every significant breach that has occurred because of the supply chain. Guess what, people? You're on the front lines. What do we mean by a cybersecurity strategy? It is really how we address 3 questions. Number 1, what are you protecting? That becomes self-evident. Number 2, what are you protecting against? Most of you have looked at things like focused and broad-based attacks. How many of you have thought about collateral damage attacks? Good example. June 2017, the Russians. By the way, this is what gets me. No offense, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm saying, Anyway, the Russia targets the Ukraine. What they do is they take a ransomware virus and they take out the key, which means once it's released, it's going to destroy data. They target health, energy, transportation, finance, education. Why those? Because those drive industry. A hospital in Kiev is hooked up to a terminal which is there for Maersk. Everyone know, anyone who's Maersk? What's Maersk? No, M-A-E-R-S-K. They're one of the world's largest transportation company. The virus jumps from the hospital to Maersk. I talked with the IT person who was responsible. He said he was literally running through the hallways telling people not to turn on their computers. Because as soon as you turn on your computer became a brick. Guess how much it cost them to deal with that issue? Not even the target, $300 million. That's called the non-petty attack. And notice what they did. Indirect costs, Maersk, FedEx, Saint-Gobain, construction company, Maersk, Mondelez. Total cost, $10 billion. That is the reality. Social. Everyone thinks that technology is computer-based. It's Terminator come to life. Remember Skynet? With Arnold Schwarzenegger? Anyway, the point is, I'm going to tell you a little story. First of all, what happened December 7th, 1941? Pearl Harbor. Let me tell you what happened. Let me introduce you to someone you don't know. A lieutenant by the, notice I'm a Canadian, I say lieutenant, not lieutenant. Canadians always say it properly, lieutenant. Kermit A. Tyler. Ever heard of him? Who is Kermit A. Tyler? No, he wasn't. He was a lieutenant who was in charge of the radar operators. What happened was there was a radar sign on Point Koaloa. At 6:45, 6:30 in the morning, this radar post reported a large flight of airplanes coming in. Guess what that large flight was? Japanese. He reported it to our famous Kermit A. Tyler. Now understand, this is Sunday in Pearl Harbor. What do you think the people who are on the battleships have done on Saturday? They have been enjoying the fruits of Pearl Harbor. So he's thinking to himself, if I say that this is an attack, I'm going to be getting out of bed a whole bunch of people who are hungover, including officers, and they're not going to be happy with me. And if I'm wrong, what's going to happen to my ability to be promoted? It won't be very good. So guess what he tells the two operators? Shut down the site. It's a flight of B-17s. The result? Pearl Harbor. Let me ask you a question. Had the American Navy an hour and 25 minutes of warning, what could have happened? What could have happened? That's the point. Here's the lesson we learn from history. Technology often advances faster than management. The true potential of technology occurs when management catches up. You can automate the mundane. You cannot automate breakthrough strategic thinking. By the way, this is one reason, I hate to say this, all of you are going to be held accountable for strategic breakthrough thinking because the innovation is in the supply chain. So this says something else. People are important. The more we emphasize technology, the more we realize the power of people. We have to also, and this is something I've been talking to others across the world, that skill sets are critical. Critical thinking, outside in, fast decision making, working at the edges with other groups, asking the right question versus looking at the solution, and willingness to fail and learn. In fact, one of the reasons I left APICS is I was convinced this was the way of the future, and I was told that this was not important. So this gets us to the final issue, strategy.
United didn't even admit they did anything wrong. And in fact, if anything, they seem to be doubling down on this.
We're United Airlines. You do what we say, when we say, and there won't be a problem. Capiche? If we say you fly, you fly. If not, tough.
Look at what you did here!
Give us a problem, and we'll drag your ass off the plane. And if you resist, we'll beat you so badly, you'll be using your own face as a flotation device. United Airlines. You.
The point of the story.
Those are the friendly skies.
The point about this is a supply chain failure. What it's pointing out is in today's environment, we are becoming the face of strategy. We are the critical motivation for change. That is why we're requiring a new generation of thinkers. My challenge to this chapter is a simple one. Help fill the void. Help be a partner to every person who comes into APICS as you move up the ladder of promotion. The scary truth, they are becoming strategic because the demand for visibility. Moments of truth. That's a moment of truth. What's a moment of truth? Every time you interact with the organization, you make a decision. Social media is amplifying it. And we're starting to see now, because of technology and employment, what's going on? How many of you are finding it difficult to get qualified supply chain people? It is a major issue. So how can we use to differentiate supply chain? And the thing is, differentiation strategies now coming out of the supply chain. So what's the caveat? The caveat is a simple one. September 5th, I was in Johannesburg, South Africa. It's an interesting country for those people who like to see law and order in place. It's a place where they shoot you first and they tell you to stop. It's kind of interesting. I was on the outskirts, and every place had a barbed fence around it. Anyway, when I was looking, we were talking about DDMRP, and I know Carol Patek really well. And I've been trying to figure out, why is Carol having a difficulty selling this to top management? And it struck me. What we offer is operational excellence. What's the value of operational excellence? It's confidence that if something goes wrong, it won't affect us. It's confidence in our ability to be predictable. Here's something to think about. It was driven home to me. I'm a history buff. Recently, how many of you get the Smithsonian Channel? I've got 10 minutes. I know I'm almost there. Don't worry. I've been trying to get this for an hour. How many of you get the Smithsonian Channel? Okay. There's been a recent special on the Smithsonian Channel about the launching and the sea trials of the HMS Queen Elizabeth, which is the first supercarrier. The second episode was really interesting. In the second episode, they decided to do what we refer to in the States as angles and dangles. That is, you really stress the aircraft carrier. What they did is they took up the aircraft carrier to 30 knots per hour, which, if you think about it, is fairly fast. You're really boogieing down the road. Suddenly, something happened. They heard a squeal from the port shaft. Suddenly, all the attention that they were devoting on everything else was focused on that problem. That's what happens when you don't have operational excellence. It becomes a strategic distractor. Operational excellence is robustness and resilience. This is what we offer the firm. And the thing is, it's possible now. The technology is there. The management insights are there. The frameworks are there. We can do it. And the most important thing we do is allow people to take risks. Here's the reality. Right now, we see the supply chain as a negative form of risk. When something happens, it's bad. If it's bad, it's going to affect their stock price. Here's the reality. If you want to succeed in today's marketplace, you have to take risks. Risk and return are linked. If your supply chain is not robust, is not resilient, you will not take risks. Remember NASA. NASA had an organization called the Tortoise Club. You know what the motto was? You only get ahead when you stick out your neck. That is what we're doing. And that's what we're doing. And to me, I'm going to say the following. The biggest thing every one of you here has to offer to the firm is the ability to develop, implement, and maintain operational excellence. And it's done. I visit Carol Patek's firms all the time, and I'm amazed. Companies are doing things like 100% on-time delivery in the face of changing demand. So, final thoughts. The digital economy is a breakwater for us. It is one of the things that we are agreeing is really changing. It's changing everything. It involves uncertainty, opportunity, confusion, and change. To succeed, we need a more thoroughly thought-out approach. The thing that's interesting is the digital economy is supply chain opportunity. I feel sorry for people in finance. My God, they're boring. Accountants are even worse. I'm a member of the Society for the Prevention of Accountancy. You know what our motto is? A mind is a terrible thing to waste. Not that accountants have minds. Anyway, to succeed, we have to remember the 5 S's. Sense, scale, security, social, strategy, and the caveat, operational excellence. Let me give you a challenge. How are you, either individually or as a chapter, helping your company master the digital economy? Thank you.
Well, I hope you've all enjoyed this evening. I always love listening to Dr. Melnick because he has such great insights, and it's very thought-provoking, I guess, and there's just all kinds of caveats you can take from these things. So hopefully you've enjoyed this evening, and so we thank you for coming out tonight. Please remember to fill out your survey, QR code, go on the website. We appreciate your feedback. And I would just like to, again, thank you for coming tonight. We do have a few events coming up. Thank you. We do have a few events coming up in January. December, we're off because of the holidays. We do have a tour of Irwin Seating in January. And then in February, we are doing a negotiation workshop. So right here at the Pinnacle. So if negotiation is good for anything, buying a car, negotiating with your spouse, there's all kinds of things that it can apply to. So please join us in those efforts and our events. So until then, we thank you for coming tonight and enjoy the holidays and drive safe. Thank you.